So thank you very much for inviting me here in this Bienal. And this is my first time here in Romania, and it's been 3 days now that I'm here. And what I like a lot is to go around towns and just looking how people make architecture, or especially open spaces in town, and not only architecture, but also especially small pieces of houses, or not only big objects. So the idea was to go through this theme of memory and communication through a few projects of the office. So the first one is a small hotel that we won by a small competition in Switzerland, and this is the old part of the town. This is the town hall in Sierre, and this was this small hotel. This hotel came from the 18th century, and it was in a really bad state when we got it. So here's a small picture of this hotel. It had only 10 rooms and a small cafe and a restaurant. And on the back was a parking lot, and this was the main street. So this is this part we try to kept it with the rooms on the upper part, and trying to just give it a new image, but with simple facade. So what we did is we kept the cafe on the bottom, and we had to make a bigger kitchen because they really wanted to have a restaurant. So the restaurant, we had to push it out, and that's what we did with this open glass. And the idea was to have this kind of difference between this old orthogonal box with the rooms, with the small windows, and have this discussion or this duality between the open space and the old one. So we took out the parking lot to make this new restaurant and have this terrace on the outside. So it's like a small leaf inside a park. This is the old cafe. This is the only thing that we kept inside this restaurant, but because we wanted to have always a memory or something of what was there before. So this is really the only part we kept. The only thing that's new was the floor and the tables and the bar on the back. And we wanted to have this dialogue between the past and the present and the future in the way of using materials or talking of architecture. And the idea was to have this open windows all around, so all the tables could have a view on the outside, and you're never on a table that doesn't have the view on the terrace. And this was the last idea. Every room, we wanted to have a different type of wood on the floor, so we used different essence of wood. So all the floors are with different wood, and on the ceiling we took pictures of trees, of the same tree that we found on the wood, on the floor, and when you lay down on the bed, you can imagine you are outside looking at the tree. Okay, so this is a small project. And the idea here was to discuss, always the discussion for small houses, we always have a client, and the client, it's sometimes many architects, when I talk with them, they tell me, how do you do these small houses? Because it's such a hard time to discuss with the client. They never seem to understand what we think is best for them. So it's always a question of how to bring up the idea and discuss with the client on how to bring up the idea with him and not going and try to impose an idea. So sometimes you want to make 3-story high and the discussion goes for 1 story, but the site always influence, and with the site it's always a good mean to discuss with the client that you are not imposing him, but it's also the site that imposing the architecture you're trying to do. So this is a small house in well, there's not much constructions around, and the client had this site he earned from his parents. So it's up in hills where I live. It's a valley on both sides. It's hills, it's mountains, and we pushed the house all the way down at the breaking point of the slope to have this terrace opening. Here's another view. So it was like a cube, and we tried to cut down the front to make this terrace, and on the back it's a small patio for the entrance. The entrance it's here on the back. The idea was to make like a small house, like a small cabin that you almost didn't have windows from the outside, but once you're inside, it's quite open. This is a very small program for people, a couple of old people that don't work anymore and wanted to have a house just for their old days, but they never had children, so they just had a small room for guests. So this is a patio entrance where you can see it's quite open once you go through the patio. And we try to work with one open space and just have two boxes that generates different spaces and has different view on the outside. Even if it's a small project, try to have really different views on the outside. Here's the first box with the kitchen. And on the floor we try to have just one material to see the connection between all the spaces. So everything is open, but we have the same floor on the floor. This is the entrance, and this is just the bathroom. Okay, so this is a small project. Also, after this is also it was an old wine house. In Switzerland, we have a lot of wine, a lot of grapes or wine, but and not different from France or. Everybody has a small piece of land with grapes, so we don't have big companies or whatever with big landscapes. So this is like a normal small village house from the 19th century. So it was like we have a lot in my region with these wooden madriers, we call it. I don't know how you say it in English. But, and the back was usually the kitchen. The front was the open space, and there usually was one room or two rooms on this floor, and on the last floor was always the cellar or the places to make the wine. So this is just another view with the valley and the pieces of land with the vineyards. So what we tried to do, the house was too small, so inside was like 1.90 meters. So we had to construct new madriers to raise it up a little. And we tried to take out the plaster all around it to give it a new, it had different type of plaster, and we wanted to have one idea of this mineral against this wooden, and just carry this wooden piece on top. And small details, but we'll try to make the windows a floor, I think, on the outside, and in the wood try to keep it on the back, to try to have this difference of way of showing the lightness of the wood against this mineral that's much from the stone. For me, the big question is always with these small kind of objects, the question is nobody really wants to renovate them, because they cost to renovate, but it is important for our architecture heritage, I would say, to try to give them a new life. And sometimes it's not possible just to restore them very little. For me, it has to, not when you do great, when you have a church or whatever, it's different. But in these small objects, otherwise they're going to just be destructed. So we have to find new way of giving it a second life. So even if I permit myself to change many things, I try to keep the soul of the house there. So this is just another view from the inside. And what we try to do is to try in the inside to keep this idea of mineral the same as the facade, to try to have this mineral on the outside and the wood in the wooden part. So this is the inside. We just use panels of cement with fibers to try to get this mineral idea and have a slab on the floor. And here we see the old wooden part. So here, of course, for me to give it a second life, we have to have in Switzerland all the energy questions, and sustainable development is very important. So of course this is all isolated, so we have to bring a new skin inside. So where we could keep the old wood, we kept it as the floor, and here we have this new box in wood. And here's this was a big discussion for the client to accept to have this kind of fiber inside his room, but with the opening, now he accepts it. This is another small house, but with a total different idea of how to integrate a house into a landscape. This was also an old couple that came to my office. They were about 80. And they also constructed many houses, but they kind of wanted to have a big discussion on why. Every time I had to give them a proposal to an answer, they wanted to have questionings of how and why I proposed these things. So it was a big, also, the thing is, all the wine yards are on the south, and everybody wants also now to live on the south slope. So it's always discussion on how to integrate these, especially with these small houses, because we're not going to be able to build all the time all these small houses. So this was a new landscape. We were the first ones to build on this wine. But the question was how to minimize the impact on the floor and how to not disturb. The landscape went all the way down, and the idea was to keep the vineyards the most possible. So the idea was to bring this house, stack up 3 floors, and have this opening terrace with this eye on the valley. and there is a back door underneath just to go in the bottom into the cellar, and there we have to go outside the house to go into the cellar, and the idea was really to go into the soil of the land. And right now we're building just a small other terrace into the vineyard, but in a distance from the house. Yeah, so here's up in the terrace. And the idea was also to try to find a color that could go into this vineyard. So we painted it all on the green on the back. And in the 60s, there was a lot of masonry that was done with a kind of a small, they put inside and they just split it on the wall. And we tried to take two colors and it just, mix like we'll try to have these two colors to be able to try to find the color of the leaves of the vineyards. Here's another. So in the back, the idea was like a U plan and being quite close behind, but just having this part like hooking up on the road and just leaving the vineyards on the sides. That's missing one. It's like the idea was to have like this coat, this green coat around the house, but all the inside is only made of concrete. And really having, again, this discussion of having this mineral inside and having like this green vegetable, trying to integrate the house into this vineyard. So everything is done in concrete, and even the floor with all the heating, so it was quite hard doing the construction to get only this idea. But the client, when we proposed this, they said that we only have all the furniture, but I think, we have a last picture, we can see it works very well. And this couple had children, but they left the houses, so all the house is completely open on the second floor and you can slide different doors to make different rooms, but they wanted to be able to use all the room when they are by their own in the house. So here's another picture with their furniture. This is our sports hall into this is a school, a big complex of school, and we had to, this was a competition which we won, and we had to try to integrate this big sports hall, because this was already two sports halls, but the school's complex is very big, but there was all this part here with all residential buildings, so we had to try to find how to break down this big box with these three inside this three sports hall, and it was supposed to be working at one for when they had competitions. So we tried to break it down with big sheds, kind of taking this scale of housing and break it down. So it has one big box with the sports hall and this smaller part here that generates, we had to hook it up with these two, and this part has all the services. So the idea was also to kind of read industrial kind of construction, but having at the same time working with these sheds like a fan that opens up, and when you're in the inside it gives you different views on the outside. Yeah, we work again with concrete. Concrete is a material we use a lot because since the 20th century, in our part of Switzerland, we are completely used to leaving concrete without plastering, and even the big public is used to having this concrete. So this is a view from the inside of the sports hall. Usually I like to use always two materials and try to have kind of a discussion between these two, and in this project we went with the metal and the concrete, and the metal was galvanized, and we wanted to have this kind of lighting inside the sports hall. Here's a view, because with this big window on the bottom we had to put 10 cables inside this big wall. So yeah, that part was this big wall makes 40 centimeters of concrete to be able to it's almost like a bridge. And here we have these 3 fans opening up. Here we see it when it works with the 3 different partitions of like a sports hall with not opened. Again, and here is the inside places. For me, always the sanitary or the small toilets or whatever can have big colors, because we don't stay there and it's only places we have to move through. But I like the other places to be more calm. And this is the last project. This was also a competition for residential buildings, and it's in a part of Switzerland near Geneva. Here we have the lake. So this is a small village, and this part of Switzerland has big problems on the land, because the land keeps on going so high for the prices, so the people cannot stay in the village and cannot be able to afford to buy lands. So the commune made this competition to build a small residential with only two rooms. We call it with 3 pipi. Yeah, it's like small apartments with only 2 rooms, and they are only made for couples, young couples or old people that cannot afford to stay inside the commune. But the idea here, we have the old village, and this was more new, and the idea was to change the side of the roof to keep it more like it was supposed to be the same one as this one in the asking of the competition, and we were the only ones who tried to tell and say we have to change the rooms. It gets even better integrated into the old village, and not trying to keep like making a big bar along the road. But we had to use the same materials, so use tiles and use this plaster on the outside. We didn't have it's also a low budget housing, so we didn't have the money to pay the outside stone, or so we just went with plaster and different size of plaster to give it this idea of not making horizontals, but trying to make it a movement and having one facade. This is the other part we see. Here's the parking. This is one level underneath the road with the parking, and 4 stories of apartments. So here's the main plan. It's 4 different apartments in the angles, and every apartment has two angles. So here's the open space and the 2 rooms on both sides. Here's the more distribution from the inside. When we went again with the concrete and the galvanized. And inside the apartment, we tried to really calm down and have something more smoother, or with the wood and the completely white plasters on the wall. Okay, that's all. Thank you.